Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at a new section which is on building teams, right? Like how do we go about and build a team, right? So I want you to take a look at this image, and I'd like to begin with this quote, this wonderful quote from the book The Little Prince. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the people to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Just take a minute, connect to the element of water. Let's come back, right, to our breath. And what does this mean? How did you feel? What came to you as you're seeing this quote over there and as you heard the quote? And of course, if you actually look at the image, there is, a ship as well. But it's somewhere towards the edge, right? What first catches our attention, or at least my attention in this, was the water, the endless sea, right? I'm not going to explain what this is. I want you all to sit with it, but I'll come back to this image and so that gives you some time to really go, what does this actually mean? Okay? So this is one of my favorite images. It's from one of my favorite places, which is the Chamundi Hills in Mysore, right? And this was on a beautiful foggy day. So the steps, it's almost like, I think at least 45 minutes to an hour's trek up, depending of course on your speed. And as you look at this image, I want you to pay attention to what's written there, right? Why have I put up the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step? What does this have to do with teams, right? And we are looking at sports teams, right? I'd also like you to just ponder for a second on how has your experience been in working with a team, right? For a project, right? And I want you to also go, how do I begin a project? What's my style? What's my pattern, right? So do I get all excited? Do I get all pumped up? Do I bring the team immediately together? Do I say, okay, we're going to do this? Or I like to sit with it. I like to chew upon it. I bring the team together, hear what they have to say. What do you do? What's your style? And there's no right or wrong way, okay? But I want you to look at, okay, what's been working? And think of one particular project in particular where your team was on fire. In one of the discussions I had, right, with one of my colleagues, I was telling them, right, about this team which hadn't qualified for a major event for a long time. It was a few years they hadn't qualified. This was a team, it was a national team, and the whole aim was really to come together and qualify. And the team was on fire, really was on fire. There were differences. It was a new coach, but they came together because the vision, right, was we want to qualify. This is our legacy. We want to gain back what we've actually lost over the couple of years. And till the qualifiers, it was like a team on fire, okay? And then, of course, it was a little bit of going down because one main, what you could say was goal, right, was achieved. But then that needs to get redefined. So that's why the vision statement and the mission, what am I embarking upon? So that's why I thought this was a really nice image to actually put across because, J. Krishnamurti, he says the first step is the last step. I know it sounds, what does that mean, right? But a lot of times, right, we see people sitting on the fence, right? So taking that first step and how I take the first step also becomes very important, right? So, like if you look at it, I'm someone who used to climb, the this hillock. It's also a cultural and spiritual place. How does one begin? So like if you just stand and you'll notice, like there are the joggers, there are the sports people, there are people for fitness. So how they go about. Then there's this enthusiastic group which you like, probably doesn't have much practice, but like they're really charged up with energy. So boom boom bang, they like start off, and then you'll see that somewhere in the middle their energy is really dipping down, because it's you need to make a consistent plan. But then they regroup, they probably got something to nourish themselves, and then you start off, right? So it's very important to go, what am I embarking upon, right? Remember the mountain that we spoke about when we did the champion mindset, right? All the units are very interconnected, right? So what really is my vision? What's my dream goal, right? And how am I going to go about embarking, right? I'm not going to jump from step 1 to step, let's say 200. That's not going to happen. So how do I embark, and what do I do which will ensure that I'm going to accomplish what I've set my mind for? Okay, so keep this in mind. And now I'm going to go back to this first slide. So what do you think the author over here is saying, right? The vision, right? Sometimes the nitty-gritties is very important, but also what is very vital is knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay, yeah. So now we're going to watch this video by Mr. Murli RX, who is the high performance cricket coach.
Team gets together for a purpose. Now, first of all, we need to understand what is team. Team is a group of individuals with different skill sets, with different motivation, with different aspiration, different purpose, different desire, and all these individuals form a team. Now, why is this team formed? So, if you understand the reason why a team is formed, so we need to set the purpose for the team. Winning team, losing team, all of them have the same goal, and that goal is to win the tournament. So what sets apart a winning team and a losing team? Because both of them have the same goal. So what sets them apart is human behavior. It is the behavior of the players, it is the behavior of individuals, and in different circumstances, how they manage, how they handle. So how do you develop good human behavior? It's about setting values, it's about setting culture, it's about setting ethics and morals. So these values help them, these values help them to build behavior, and this behavior help them to produce the desired results. So all in all, it's about the team that sets apart, the winning team that sets apart from a losing team is the culture that they develop, is the culture that they foster, which helps them to be a winning side. So culture is very competitive. Creating a culture in itself is a very competitive tool, and the job of this culture is to get the best out of every individual.
So that was a wonderful video, right? And he actually touches upon how the coach plays such an important role in setting the vision and embarking on the mission. So that's why I like to call it the vision and the mission. Okay, so now what really is team building, right? So as a psychologist, people think and people actually presume a lot of times that, okay, you go, you have a certain amount of time, you do, let's say, a team building activity for, one session or like 2 sessions, or maybe during the camp when the camp is in a particular place, stationed in a particular place. But that's not all. So team building is not just something which happens in a jiffy. It's not just something that you do once and then the team has bonded. No, just think about your team. Think even probably as of your family unit, right? Like there is a way in which people come together, and we're talking of people over here, right? um, so what I'm trying to say is it's a dynamic process, and building a growth mindset environment becomes very, very vital. Now, what do I mean by a growth mindset? Do you recall I'd spoken about the sandwich approach, or the sandwich approach, or the constructive criticism, when we were doing the chunk on communication, right? So let's say, I'll give this example. So let's say a young players come into the team, and it's one of the major sporting events. Let's say something like Asian Games, okay? And of course, for someone who's for it's someone's first camp, what they're seeing, they want to experience it all, right? Now you have a tournament, or you have your event the next day. What is vital is slowly coming out of that and coming back into your zone, right? And that's what the coach and the team and the country expects, right? So now what happens when an individual, for whatever reason, does not follow that, right? Then it becomes either the senior player or the coach's role, right, to ensure that this player is going to be in his or her best element to perform the next day, right? So this is what I'm talking of, is extrinsic, which can distract, right? Now the second also becomes very intrinsic factors, right? Especially when you look at like players in their teens, early 20s, right? So I remember one of the coaches would say, Chaitanya, you have to talk to this guy. He's on his phone till late. Like once the coach was saying, it was again a major sporting event, and he had a race the next day early morning, and he's not switched off. Now what happens, right? So when I sat with him, thankfully he still went on to perform, but the coach felt like, had he rested well, had he followed his routines, that's why routines are so important, he would have actually done much better, right? It's not just about the medal, it's really about, can I beat my best? This is what I tell athletes. So when I had a session with him after the that tournament, I said, what happened, what were you doing? He said, oh, nothing, ma'am, I was just on the phone. And it's also that age where youngsters are probably on the phone. So I said, listen to whomever you're talking, right? That's fine, it's it's part of life, but you need to know, I've come here for a reason, right? If you weren't capable, you wouldn't be there, right? And also there are so many waiting in line, so you need to do justice to why you are where you are, right? So one of the things I said with him is, you have to switch off, let's say at least by 10 o'clock, or at least half an hour before you're going to go to bed. Because if you go on, like even if you're lying down and going on checking the phone, what happens? Your brain is alert. Then after you keep the phone as well, right, it's going to take you a while to really switch off, because you need that rest to compete the next day. Especially, let's say, if it's a sprinter, or it's like a short distance runner, right, or a swimmer, it's boom boom bang. Or even any even if it's a longer event, you have to be in your element. So rest is very, very vital, right? So of course, so there the coach was obviously angry, but then the point was, so now I can't hold a danda in a similar way. It is the coach's role to pull him up. And I said, I understand where you are, but the point is, what is it that you want? So slowly moving them from, okay, come back to what's your goal, and also fostering a growth mindset, right, which will instill positive attitude, right? Like if you just keep pulling up an athlete, be it as a psychologist and or being as a coach, does that give them the impetus to really grow, right? So it's a lot about grooming. I remember once Saurav Ganguly was talking of one of the younger players, and and he said, this was a little of the younger, let's say naughty player, like so he was like, he told one of the guards, like, please watch out. And this player apparently, had gone out and he'd gone out partying, and then he comes back. And then Ganguly actually, speaks, okay, like, yeah, you groom them in slowly, right? Because, yes, this was wrong. And then how do we groom this individual, right? So, what in psychology we say is, negative reinforcement, right? You take away something which is important, right? Like maybe one day you don't, they don't have the practice session, or in some way you show. So punishment would be, they just get shaken up. So recognizing what is the need, and also knowing that, okay, this player is young, he's made a mistake, how do we help him or her grow? Okay, because slowly what we want is to bring in each individual, like what the coach was also saying, into the group and perform as one unit. That really is the key. Okay, so I'll give you this example. It was one of the coaching camps. Okay, so this was a camp, if I'm not wrong, for a month. So we'd been working, and there were practice matches, so they were divided into two groups. And of course, it's also towards the pretty end of the camp, so they are being observed. We'll know that who goes into the main future camps. It was one of the junior camps, future India teams. So there were two groups, right? And one group took a wrong decision, right? The captain, because the pitch, right? So in the beginning we didn't know why he chose to, let's say, bat, okay, when it was a bowling wicket. And then the other group, right, did the opposite. Okay, now both the groups had players who were very individually focused, or let's say it was more because I have to perform because I'm being watched. But also what's being really watched is this individual contributing to the team? That's one of the vital criteria, right? So so after the match got over, it's always very good to see them in practice matches, also along with the tournament. And then I was asking, I said, what happened? And he said, I knew we should have bowled, but then quite a few of the players said, okay, no, let's bat, and that cost them, right? And then like there was one of the younger players, okay, and then so there were two matches, right? Like then the other, when the second time round, the other team didn't perform so well, because I think they had kind of gone like, okay, we won this. So and then the second time, so so there were a couple of things which was happening, and I was also looking at it individually. So when I had the individual sessions, I said, what was happening? So one of the bowlers, very young bowler, very smart, he got hit very badly, okay, and which also costed the team that he was playing for. I said, what happened? And he said, oh, ma'am, I was really trying out some things. So I said, okay, it was like, let's say, the first couple of overs. But when you got hit twice, right, did you know that this is happening, this can cost? Or did you still want to experiment knowingly? Did you do it very consciously? And he said, yeah, I felt this was an opportunity for me to really try some things. So I said, well, one, you got hit pretty badly. Second was, it cost your team, right? Now this can become very vital, right? Like, when do you experiment? Maybe if the team was doing very well, yes, that was your brilliant opportunity, right? And remember the captain that I was saying who took the wrong decision? I said, what happened? And then he said, I just went in with what the group said. But I said, but you made the captain, right? So when you knew that this is a bowling wicket, not choosing, not making the right decision can cost the team as well. So you get to know a lot of nuances. And also what was very interesting was, this is a practice match, but you really understand what's what. And then I also went down for some time and sat with the group, okay. I was sitting, and then you hear the banter, right? Like some of them are like really very confident, which kind of like can pull down other players, and then some of them are like, okay, what's happening? Some of them are like, I need to score. So it was really about looking as to, yes, you need to score, but then at what cost? Or you need to do something, does it help the team? You cannot forget the team, because this is a team game. I remember another player, very young cricket player, He had come in for an individual session. This is not with the camp as such. And, so he was doing very well, and he would say, I want to score so much, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And at no time, I heard like the team, I want the team to win, and this is for the team. And I said, listen, no matter how much you score, but then, if you're not keeping the other players in mind, right, then you're not going to be seen as a team player. And that's going to be one of the vital aspects, because, what we've been talking through is really a coming together is needed, right? Right? Now, what we saw in the previous was, right, what is team building? Now, how do we build? So one of the ways in which, especially, I think most psychologists and I like to do is be part of the culture session, or what we call, where the team in the beginning of the camp is coming together and really put out, what do we want our story to be? Right? What's emerging for us as a group, as we're coming together? How do we want to be seen and known? Do you want to be ruthless? Do you want to be a team which inspires? Is it winning at all costs? How is it? How are we coming together? And what the image you see there is really the hero's journey, where it's a beautiful way to connect. The mythology section is where a person, an athlete, is embarking on his or her journey. So there is going to be trials, there's going to be challenges, there are going to be helpers, there's going to be a metamorphosis, a shift in you. You're going to perform, and you're going to complete the journey, and you're going to be transformed as a person. And this is what you hear a lot of youngsters, especially when they make it, right? They're like, oh my god, that camp, it opened me up. Oh my god, like, you really, like, the boy becomes a man, the girl becomes a woman. You're coming to age, you're coming of age, you're really blooming, right? And it's really nice to have an anchor to hold. I like to use myths. We'll also have a discussion in this unit, where how do we build the qualities that we want? It's not just cognitive, right? Like, everyone knows what, I'm guessing, a lot of the aspects, but then how do we integrate this into my system? How can I be the best version of myself, and how do I better myself? So, some of the qualities in particular that we try to look at is belonging, right? That identity which comes when one feels part of the team is extremely essential, right? Mastery in his or her skill, and independence, right? I take ownership for what I'm doing, for my growth. It's not just what my captain says, the leadership group says, or the coach says, right? And last but not the least, okay, generosity. Can I help my fellow participant? I know my teammates struggling. So how does this come together, right? And if you remember the camp example I was giving, this was a young group, right? Like, so obviously they're thinking of themselves, but what we then start trying to groom in is all these qualities, right? Yeah. So now, you have the team, we have the culture session. Also, what's very important, is understanding each person in the team, right? I've met some wonderful coaches, where they say, like, yes, to know each and to give that quality time to each player is so essential, right? We look at the larger picture, but I think also what's very important is knowing those little nuances of the player, of what will help a particular player, what clicks, so to really look at the player whole as a whole, his or her personality, what motivates, and what are their social influences, where are they coming from? I remember one of the coaches was telling me, like, this was a player who was coming from a very, very humble setting, and he just put at the buffet table, right? Like I think he just put one chapati or one dish, and then the coach was like, why? And then he said, I don't know what the rest are. So there you also groom in the person, right? You help the person understand, the athlete understand what is actually good. Especially when we're in a hotel, we also take care of what is the nutritious value and what can you also take in. And also, right, how do I integrate this player who's probably a little different, coming from a different place, right? So, I like to use this because when we say athlete, right, now an athlete, it's if you take the field of the athlete or the system of the athlete, has so many components. He has his parents, his family, the coaches, the teammates, the competitors, the spectators. So how and what is the connection of my athlete to each of this? I need to understand. Right? I remember, like, for example, you must be thinking, okay, why about competition? What does he think about competition? Where does he place himself with other competitors? I remember one of the players was telling me that there was this time and they were doing, the team was really, really down. And he said, the captain came in and said, we belong to this team. How can we lose? And, suddenly that just brought everyone together and going, we are the ones who dictate. We've been dictating. So, encouraging and motivating the group when the chips were really down. Some of the competitors will go like, oh, this one's better than me. Or, the minute this one comes to bowl or this one is batting, I can't. So, understanding that becomes very, very vital. Spectators, I remember during COVID, very honestly, a journalist asked me and I said, oh, but at least the matches are beginning and people will get influenced. But trust me, I think it was very, very obvious when we saw that, there weren't crowds, and especially for the senior players and people who thrive on, crowd energy, right? It did affect, it did impact. So, what's my connection? I remember there was this jumper, okay, and he would get so charged up, okay, so charged up. But then sometimes he would lose it totally, right? Like after a particular level, when the team is going on echoing his name, he totally lost focus because his energy moved there. And also knowing, like we've all known, like what has happened a lot of times, let's say especially in Australia where, we did have some differences and the crowd weren't supporting. How do we work with it, right? Because we're not going to probably always have, a crowd which is cheering for us. And also, even with the crowd or spectators cheering, what is my way of functioning? Does this impact me negatively? Does this get me more perturbed? Does this get me anxious? So then do I need to zone out? Or can I thrive on the energy? Right? So really, an athlete, you look at them in totality, right? Understanding them fully. And for that, I've always believed that your team may have, let's say, 15, 20 players. It's vital to know each and every one of them. Right? And then you also bring them together as a team. So this is one of the famous coaches, Coach Wood in his success mantra. And it's so beautiful because if you see, going from the bottom, right, it starts with, hard work, but then what you see next is friendship, loyalty, cooperation, enthusiasm. The next level is self-control, alertness, action, determination. Then you see fitness, skill, team spirit. As you go up the ladder, can you see, or up the platforms, then there's poise and confidence. And finally, to give your personal best, right? So success is not just about going on working hard work. And especially as a team, right, there are a lot of factors which come in together and which is very, very essential, right? Like sometimes, let's say, in a league or in a particular camp, there are like two friends who are part of it. And then just how they thrive, how they encourage becomes, it's just beautiful to see. But also like new players coming in together. And then how do they bond? Right? How can, let's say, a senior help a junior? What is, because the team really has to come. The group of individuals have to come together. Not just while having fun, but also, like we've been having discussions, where we can have tough talks, we can have difficult talks, where we come together, we celebrate, we um, cry, we feel bad when someone's in distress. So becomes very, very vital to actually become one unit, right? And that does not mean people have to stick together, because that's what I always say, that you also need some time off, right? Like if people are sticking together all the time, that may also be difficult. People do need some breathing space, people do need some space for their own process. So understanding what and who needs what kind of attention, and most important is also not over cocooning or over guiding, because we want each one to grow, right? And it's a process. I like to give the example of a plant, right? You sow the seed and then you wait. And I think like we've seen this a lot with the leagues, we've seen this a lot with India teams. It's not, they may not click in one season, one tournament, but then how do we keep nourishing them and see them bloom? And I think that's what great coaches do, transformational coaches do, and leaders do, which will be one of the sections we will look at. Okay, so I want to bring in this video next. I think it's a really nice one which talks about coming together, right? And unity as such. Okay.
Yeah.
I can give an analogy for the team. Imagine you have a number of matchsticks, okay, and a lot of matchsticks organized, and the match in a box, and the matchsticks are all in different. The head of the matchstick are all in different directions, and the task is to burn each head. So what happens when each of these matchsticks are in different direction? So first thing that you need to do is you organize all those matchsticks and arrange them in one order. And then after arranging them in one order, you start firing the matchstick. So that becomes much easier. So this is how I take this analogy into the team and say, how do we get our team together? How do we get everybody together? So it is a team, as I earlier said, that it's a group of individuals with different skill sets and different motivation level. So the role of a coach is to first of all define the purpose, and once the purpose is established, then what happens? Individual roles has to be defined. So each one of them, each individuals have their own desires and roles, desires and the motivation level. So how do you bring them together to align with one common purpose? So this is where a leader or a coach plays a major role. So the leader defines, the coach defines the values and the cultures of the team, and he defines the role of each individual player. So this stage is called as forming. I call this stage as forming.
So to summarize, what would be some of the core components to build a successful team? As we've been talking, shared vision and very clear purpose. If not, it can just fizzle away. Okay. Remember the image I showed you of the steps, right? I can get lost with every animal, every bird. What are we there for? What's our purpose? Right? You've gone for a major tournament. Yes, there's going to be so much. You're going to meet the icons. You're going to meet a lot of people, but what am I here for? At the end of the day, I cannot forget that. And as a team, we work together, right? Collaborative action and being very clear what my role is. I don't try to do everything. Okay? Accountability of each member, taking ownership for what I've done and aiding the team. And I think this team identity is something which I cannot emphasize enough. Really being one unit is very, very key. When we're doing well, but most importantly, even when chips are down. Because that's when, groups can come together or groups can really split. Okay, a positive team culture, as we were discussing. Honest communication, which can really foster growth. And last but not the least, supportive environment and peer support. Okay, very, very vital. And you see, this is how loose groups then come together and bond. Okay. Now, I want to show this quote by one of the corporate leaders, right? And he describes leadership So I'm going to read this out for you. Leadership is the art of inspiring a group of people to align to a purpose and deliver at a level much more than the sum of parts. It is innate and inbuilt in all of us, though sometimes takes a little nudge to bring it out. While there is a science to it, its soul is really in the softer aspects: passion with compassion, courage with empathy, and nurturing with discipline. I think that's a beautiful line, right? While the diversity of the profile of members of teams have increased, leading to much better team performances, it has also increased the challenges for the leader to integrate and align divergent ideologies, aspirations, and styles to a common vector. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful quote, right? So, if you're wondering why this is here, this is whom I call my little girl. When she was integrating, and it is teamwork, right? Really to start forming a bond, starting to show that this is a place where you can start trusting, start feeling safe, and what better way than play, right? I think this is something I will talk about again, play instinct and why it is so important, right? When we're coming together, building it with each individual player and the larger team, right? So I'm going to stop this section finally on this note. Thank you.